The cantina on Xerion Prime buzzed with the usual mix of alien chatter and synthesized music. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen sat in the corner booth, nursing his drink and trying to ignore the stares from the other patrons. Being one of the few humans in this sector of the galaxy always drew attention, but tonight felt different. The weight of hostile gazes pressed against his shoulders like a physical force. Marcus had been on shore leave for 3 days, a much-needed break from his assignment with the Terran Expeditionary Force. The war with the hegemony had been grinding on for 2 years, and even seasoned soldiers needed time to decompress. He'd chosen Xerion Prime because it was supposedly neutral territory, a trading hub where species from across the galaxy could conduct business without the political tensions that plagued most worlds. The hegemony soldier entered the cantina like a storm cloud rolling across a peaceful sky. Zefak Thorne stood nearly 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the dim lights. His forearms moved with predatory grace as he scanned the room, compound eyes finally settling on Marcus. The human felt the alien's gaze like ice water in his veins. Marcus recognized the uniform immediately. Hegemony Special Forces, the elite warriors who had earned a reputation for ruthless efficiency across dozens of star systems. Their kind had been responsible for the massacre on New Shanghai, the orbital bombardment of Europa Station, and countless other atrocities that had pushed humanity into this interstellar conflict. The cantina's atmosphere shifted as other patrons noticed the tension. Conversations died, and several aliens quietly moved toward the exits. The bartender, a 4-armed Altarian, began cleaning glasses with nervous energy while keeping one eye on the developing situation. Zefak approached Marcus's table with deliberate slowness, each step calculated to intimidate. His translator device crackled to life, converting his native clicks and whistles into standard galactic. "Human soldier," he said, the words dripping with contempt. "You sit in my presence without showing proper respect to your betters." Marcus looked up from his drink, his expression calm despite the adrenaline beginning to surge through his system. "Last I checked, this was neutral space. We're both off duty here," his voice carried, the steady confidence that had been drilled into him during years of training with the Green Berets. The aliens' mandibles clicked in what Marcus recognized as laughter. "Off duty? There is no off duty in war, human. Your species has proven to be a persistent annoyance to the natural order of the galaxy. The hegemony has plans to correct this mistake. Is that so?" Marcus set down his glass and leaned back in his seat. His hand moved casually to his side, where a combat knife was concealed beneath his civilian jacket. "And what makes you think you're better than us?" Zefak's compound eyes glittered with malice. "Your people are weak, unworthy of the stars. You have no exoskeleton, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses. You are soft pink creatures who should have never left your mudball world." He gestured with one of his secondary arms. "The hegemony has conquered 47 star systems. Your kind has managed to hold on to 12, and even those will fall soon enough." Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made several nearby aliens step back. "You know what your biggest mistake is? Enlighten me, soft one. You think being tough means having armor plating and claws." Marcus stood slowly, his movements fluid and controlled. At 6 feet tall, he was dwarfed by the alien warrior, but there was something in his posture that spoke of coiled steel. "You've never had to develop real toughness because you were born with natural advantages." Zefak's mandibles spread wider. "Foolish human. I have killed dozens of your kind in combat. Your weapons are crude, your tactics predictable. You fight like frightened children. Maybe the ones you've faced so far." Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the now silent cantina. "But you've never faced a Green Beret?" The alien's translator struggled with the term, finally settling on elite human warrior. Zefak's clicking laughter filled the air. "Elite? You make jokes in the face of death, human. It matters not what title you give yourself. Tonight you die, and tomorrow the hegemony continues its righteous conquest." Marcus nodded slowly. "You want to test that theory?" What happened next would be debated in military academies across the galaxy for decades to come. The hegemony warrior moved with inhuman speed, all 4 arms striking simultaneously in a pattern designed to overwhelm any opponent. His primary arms went for Marcus's throat while his secondary arms aimed for the human's midsection. a killing technique that had proven effective against dozens of species. Marcus wasn't there. The Green Beret had moved like liquid lightning, dropping low and rolling to his left while drawing the combat knife in a single fluid motion. The blade, forged from Terran steel and honed to a molecular edge, found the gap between Zefak's armor plates at his left knee joint. The alien's roar of pain shook the cantina's windows. Green ichor spurted from the wound as he stumbled, his carefully coordinated attack thrown into chaos. Marcus was already moving again, using the momentum from his roll to spring up behind the alien warrior. Zefak spun with surprising agility despite his injury, but Marcus had anticipated the move. The human ducked under a wild swing and drove his knee into the alien's wounded leg. The joint buckled, sending the 8-foot warrior crashing to the floor. Impossible, Zefak gasped, his translator struggling with the alien's rapid breathing. You are only human. Marcus crouched beside the fallen warrior, his knife at the alien's throat. That's where you're wrong. I'm not only anything. His voice was cold steel. I'm a product of a world that tried to kill my ancestors every single day for millions of years. I'm descended from primates who hunted megafauna with pointed sticks, from survivors who crossed frozen continents and sailed uncharted oceans. The blade pressed closer to the alien's throat. You were born with armor and weapons. We had to make ours. You were given enhanced senses. We had to sharpen ours through constant danger. You think that makes you superior, but it actually makes you weak. Zefak's compound eyes fixed on Marcus with new understanding. What are you? Marcus smiled grimly. I'm a human being, and that's the scariest thing in this galaxy. He pulled back the knife but didn't sheath it. Now get out of here before I decide to finish what you started. The alien warrior struggled to his feet, ichor still seeping from his wound. His translator crackled with static as he spoke. This is not over, human. The hegemony will remember this insult. Good, Marcus replied, settling back into his booth. Make sure you tell them exactly who handed you your ass tonight. As Zefak limped toward the exit, the cantina slowly came back to life. The bartender nervously approached Marcus's table. Drinks on the house, the Altarian said quietly. That was impressive. Marcus nodded his thanks, but his mind was elsewhere. He knew that defeating Zefak was just the beginning. The alien's threat hadn't been empty posturing. The hegemony would respond to this humiliation, and when they did, it would be with overwhelming force. What the alien warrior didn't know was that Marcus Chen wasn't just any Green Beret. He was part of a classified program, one that the hegemony's intelligence networks had never discovered. And what they didn't know about humanity's true capabilities was about to become their worst nightmare. Zefak Thorne dragged himself through the medical bay doors of the hegemony dreadnought Inevitable Victory, leaving a trail of green ichor across the pristine floor. The attending medical drones immediately swarmed around him, their mechanical appendages scanning his wounds with clinical efficiency. Status report, barked Commander Vex Korthak from the doorway. The massive hegemony officer's 6 eyes burned with barely contained fury as he surveyed his wounded subordinate. At 12 feet tall and built like a living tank, Korthak was considered one of the most dangerous warriors in the hegemony fleet. The human... Zefak gasped as the medical drones began spraying biofoam into his knee joint. He was not what our intelligence reports indicated. Korthak's mandibles clicked ominously. Explain how a single soft skin managed to wound one of my best operatives. Sir, the human moved like nothing I've encountered before. Our combat simulations never prepared us for such speed and tactical awareness. Zefak struggled to maintain his dignity, despite the humiliation burning in his compound eyes. He identified a weakness in my attack pattern within seconds and exploited it with surgical precision. You faced one untrained human civilian and returned to my ship wounded and defeated. Korthak's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Perhaps you have grown soft during our recent victories. Commander, with respect, this was no civilian. Zefak tried to stand straighter despite the medical drones still working on his leg. He identified himself as something called a Green Beret. Our translators had no proper equivalent in our language. The change in Korthak's expression was immediate and terrifying. His 6 eyes widened, and his breathing apparatus began cycling faster. Green Beret? Are you certain of this designation? Yes, sir. The human seemed proud of the title. Why? Do our intelligence files contain information about this classification? Korthak turned away, his massive form casting shadows across the medical bay. Summon the intelligence coordinator immediately. We may have a larger problem than one wounded soldier. 20 minutes later, intelligence coordinator Wythak arrived in the command center, her spider-like form skittering across the deck with nervous energy. Unlike the warrior castes, her species had evolved for information processing rather than combat, making her one of the most valuable assets in the hegemony fleet. "Commander, you requested my immediate presence?" Her voice was a whisper that somehow carried perfectly across the room. "Tell me everything our intelligence networks know about human military designations, specifically something called Green Beret." Korthak's tone left no room for delay. Thak's multiple eyes blinked in sequence as she accessed her vast memory banks. "Sir, our information on human military structures is limited. They compartmentalize their operations in ways that make intelligence gathering extremely difficult. However, I do have some fragmentary data on specialized human forces." She gestured, and a holographic display materialized showing various human military uniforms and insignia. From intercepted communications and battlefield observations, we know that humans maintain several elite units beyond their standard military forces. These groups seem to operate with unusual independence and capability. Korthak leaned forward. "Continue." "The designation Green Beret appears to be associated with what humans call special forces. Our analysts believe these individuals undergo extensive training in unconventional warfare, survival techniques, and something they term force multiplication." Force multiplication? Zefak had arrived in the command center, his wounded leg now encased in a mechanical support brace. "What does that mean?" Ethak's form shifted nervously. "From what we can determine, these humans are trained to operate behind enemy lines with minimal support, often achieving objectives that would normally require much larger forces. They specialize in training indigenous populations, sabotage, reconnaissance, and direct action missions." Korthak's breathing grew heavier. "How many of these Green Berets exist?" "Unknown, sir. Human operational security regarding their special forces is extremely tight. Our estimates range from several thousand to tens of thousands across their various colony worlds." The commander began pacing, his massive feet creating small tremors with each step. "And we have been treating them as a minor threat. How many star systems has humanity actually lost to our forces?" Hythak consulted her databanks again. "Officially, 12 systems have fallen to hegemony control in the past 2 years. However," she paused, her form trembling slightly. "However what, Coordinator?" "Sir, recent intelligence suggests that several of these conquered worlds are experiencing significant resistance activities. Supply convoys have been ambushed, communication networks disrupted, and key personnel have been eliminated with surgical precision. Our occupying forces are requesting additional reinforcements on a weekly basis." Korthak stopped pacing. "You mean the humans are still fighting on worlds we consider conquered?" "It appears so, sir. Furthermore, the resistance activities show signs of coordination and training far beyond what we would expect from civilian populations. Someone is teaching them how to fight us effectively." Zefek felt a chill run through his exoskeleton as the implications became clear. The human on Zirion Prime. He wasn't just a random soldier on leave. He was evaluating me, learning our capabilities. "Worse than that," Korthak growled. "He was sending a message. One human in open confrontation defeated one of our best warriors. Every species in that cantina witnessed it. Word will spread." Ethak's multiple limbs twitched with agitation. "Commander, if these Green Berets are as capable as the fragmentary evidence suggests, and if they are operating throughout our occupied territories, then we have not been fighting a conventional war," Korthak finished. "We have been walking into a trap that spans multiple star systems." The command center fell silent except for the hum of shipboard systems. Finally, Korthak spoke again. "Coordinator, I want everything our intelligence networks can gather about human special forces. Every intercepted transmission, every battlefield report, every rumor from the outer colonies. Sir, that will require significant resources and time. You have unlimited resources and 72 hours. Korthak's tone brooked no argument. "And I want a full tactical assessment of the human we encountered on Zirion Prime. Find out everything about this Marcus Chen." Ethak's form shifted nervously. "How do you know his name, sir?" "Because I am not the fool my subordinate proved to be. I monitored the entire encounter through surveillance feeds." Korthak gestured to a display showing the cantina's interior. This human was not surprised by our presence. He was prepared for it. On the screen, they watched Marcus Chen sitting calmly in his booth, apparently at ease despite being surrounded by potential hostiles. His movements during the fight were fluid and precise, showing no wasted motion or uncertainty. He moved like he had fought our species before, Zefak observed, his warrior's eye finally seeing what he had missed in the heat of combat. Every technique was specifically designed to exploit our anatomy and fighting style. Korthak nodded grimly. Which means human intelligence about our capabilities is far more advanced than we assumed. The question is, how long have they been studying us? The intelligence coordinator accessed more files, her form becoming increasingly agitated. Sir, I am finding disturbing patterns in our combat reports. Human forces have shown remarkable adaptability to our tactics across multiple engagements. What we attributed to luck or desperation may have been carefully planned responses. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show battle recordings from various hegemony victories. But now, viewed through the lens of this new understanding, the human retreat patterns looked less like panic and more like strategic withdrawal. Their seemingly random resistance showed signs of coordination and purpose. By the void, Korthak breathed. They have been playing a longer game than we realized. Zefak struggled to process the implications. Commander, if the humans have been deliberately studying our forces while appearing to lose, then they know exactly how we fight, how we think, and how we can be beaten. Korthak turned to address his entire command staff. Signal the fleet. Cancel all scheduled operations against human territories. We need to reassess everything we thought we knew about this enemy. As alarms began blaring throughout the ship, Ethak made a discovery that chilled her to her core. Commander, I have located information about Marcus Chen in our intelligence files. What have you found? Sir, he is not listed as an active military operative. According to our records, Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen was killed in action 6 months ago during the siege of Proxima Station. The command center fell into stunned silence. Finally, Korthak spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Then who did we encounter on Xerion Prime? Hathik's response would haunt the hegemony command structure for the brief time it had left to exist. Sir, I believe we may have just made contact with a ghost. Deep beneath the surface of Terra Nova, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Colonel Sarah Mitchell reviewed the encrypted transmission that had arrived 12 hours earlier. The message was brief, containing only a timestamp, coordinates, and a single word. Contact. The Lazarus protocol had been activated. Mitchell rose from her desk and walked to the secure communications array. Her reflection in the darkened monitor showed a woman in her early 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much classified information to ever truly rest. As director of Terran Special Operations Command's most sensitive program, she carried secrets that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of human capabilities. Authorization Mitchell 77 Alpha. She spoke into the voice recognition system. Initiate Protocol Lazarus Phase 2. The facility around her hummed to life as dormant systems activated. Throughout the complex, men and women who had been declared dead by official records began receiving their activation orders. They had been waiting for this moment for 2 years, living in the shadows while the galaxy believed humanity was losing a desperate war. The truth was far different. Marcus Chen materialized on the holographic communicator, his image transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels from Xerion Prime. Behind him, she could see the Spartan interior of a safe house that had been prepared years in advance. Report, Sergeant, Mitchell said, though she already knew the general details. Contact established with Hegemony Special Forces operative. Subject responded exactly as psychological profiles predicted. Engagement was recorded by local surveillance and witnessed by multiple species representatives. Marcus's voice carried the crisp professionalism that had made him ideal for this mission. Seeds of doubt have been planted. Mitchell nodded. Intelligence confirms the Hegemony fleet is mobilizing earlier than anticipated. Your encounter accelerated their timeline significantly. That was the intention, ma'am. How are our assets positioned? Better than expected. Phase 1 has been more successful than our most optimistic projections. Mitchell gestured and tactical displays appeared around them, showing star systems across the galaxy. 37 Hegemony worlds now have active resistance cells trained by our embedded operatives. Supply lines are experiencing 70% failure rates on contested routes. Marcus studied the displays with professional interest. What about their core worlds? That's where things get interesting. Mitchell's expression grew predatory. Our deep cover operatives have been in position for 18 months. The hegemony's own bureaucracy has been working for us without realizing it. The scale of human infiltration was staggering. While the galaxy believed humanity was fighting a desperate defensive war, Terran intelligence had been implementing the most audacious espionage operation in galactic history. Humans, with their unusual ability to mimic other species' behavior patterns and their talent for blending into alien societies, had proven to be nearly undetectable intelligence assets. Phase 3 begins tonight, Mitchell continued. Every hegemony world with a human population over 50 individuals will simultaneously experience coordinated infrastructure failures. Transportation networks, communication systems, power grids, and military logistics will suffer cascading breakdowns. Marcus felt a cold satisfaction. How many worlds? 147. The number was staggering. The hegemony controlled over 400 star systems, but nearly half would experience simultaneous sabotage operations conducted by people they had dismissed as conquered refugees or harmless traitors. Ma'am, the psychological impact alone will be devastating, Marcus observed. They'll realize that humans have been among them the entire time. That's the point, Sergeant. We want them afraid. Fear makes intelligent beings make stupid decisions. Mitchell's smile was sharp as a blade, but that's only the beginning. She activated another display showing the current positions of hegemony fleet assets. Intelligence indicates they're massing for a major offensive against our core systems. 60% of their total naval capacity is being concentrated for what they believe will be the final push to eliminate humanity as a galactic threat. Marcus understood immediately. They're leaving their home territories vulnerable. Precisely. While their fleets are massed for invasion, our real military assets will emerge from concealment and strike at targets they never knew we could reach. The truth about humanity's military capacity was the most carefully guarded secret in the galaxy. While the hegemony believed they faced a species with 12 remaining star systems and limited industrial capacity, the reality was dramatically different. Humanity had been preparing for interstellar conflict for 50 years before making first contact with other species. When they finally revealed themselves to the galactic community, they had already established hidden colonies, industrial facilities, and military bases throughout unclaimed regions of space. The 12 systems that the hegemony knew about were merely the visible portion of a vast network of human settlements. How many ships are we actually fielding? Marcus asked. The hegemony believes we have approximately 200 vessels of various classes. They base this assessment on our visible fleet actions and captured intelligence. Mitchell paused for effect. Our actual operational capacity is over 1,500 combat vessels, with manufacturing facilities capable of doubling that number within 6 months. Marcus whistled low. The entire galactic balance of power calculation is wrong, completely wrong. The hegemony has been fighting a shadow while the real enemy prepared to strike. Mitchell accessed more classified files, but ships and weapons are only part of the equation. What makes this truly decisive is the intelligence advantage we've maintained. The depth of human intelligence penetration was breathtaking. Every major hegemony military installation had human agents in positions ranging from maintenance workers to administrative officials. The species' natural tendency to view humans as harmless and primitive had made them nearly invisible within alien societies. We know their fleet positions, their supply requirements, their command structures, and their communication protocols in real time, Mitchell continued. We've had access to their strategic planning sessions for over a year. Marcus began to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. This isn't a war, ma'am. It's an execution. The largest military deception in galactic history, Mitchell confirmed. And tomorrow, when the hegemony discovers that their conquered territories are in full revolt while their homeworlds are under attack by a fleet they didn't know existed, they'll realize they never understood what they were fighting. The holographic display shifted to show Marcus's next assignment. Your mission now is to ensure the hegemony command structure is properly positioned for Phase 4. Which is? Psychological warfare on a scale that will make our previous operations look subtle. Mitchell's expression grew cold. We're going to break their will to fight by demonstrating that every assumption they've made about humanity has been wrong. Marcus studied the tactical data streaming across his displays. Ma'am, once this begins, there's no going back. The galaxy will know that humans are capable of this level of strategic deception. That's the point, Sergeant. Fear is a powerful tool, but respect based on demonstrated capability is even more valuable. Mitchell leaned forward. After tomorrow, no species in this galaxy will ever again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. The communication ended, leaving Marcus alone in his safe house with the weight of galactic history on his shoulders. Outside his window, the lights of Xerion Prime continued their normal patterns, unaware that everything was about to change. He activated his personal communicator and sent a single coded message that would be received by sleeper agents across 147 worlds. The ghost walks at midnight. Within hours, the hegemony would discover that their greatest victory had been their most devastating defeat. The humans they thought they had conquered had been studying them, infiltrating them, and preparing for this moment since the war began. The age of hegemony dominance was ending, and they still had no idea what was coming for them. Marcus checked his equipment one final time and prepared for what would either be the beginning of a new galactic order or humanity's final gamble. Either way, the hegemony was about to learn that there were much scarier things in the galaxy than natural armor and superior numbers. They were about to face human ingenuity weaponized on an interstellar scale. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak Mexius stood before the massive viewing port of his flagship, watching the gathering of the greatest armada in hegemony history. 1,500 warships hung in the void around the fortress world of Dominion Prime, their hulls gleaming with the promise of final victory over the human infestation. The Chancellor was ancient even by hegemony standards, having led his species through 40 years of galactic expansion. His crystalline carapace bore the scars of a dozen wars, and his 3 hearts beat with the rhythm of absolute certainty. Today would mark the end of humanity's brief and annoying presence in civilized space. Chancellor, Admiral Kithex approached from behind, her 8 legs clicking against the command deck's metallic floor. The final fleet elements have arrived. All ships report ready for the assault on Earth. Vorthak's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. How fitting that we end this war where it began. The humans will face extinction on their birth world, watched by whatever gods they worship, sir. Intelligence Coordinator Wethak requests an urgent briefing before we proceed, Admiral Kithex said, her tone suggesting reluctance to deliver the message. What could possibly require my attention at this moment? Our intelligence on human capabilities has been exhaustive. Vorthak's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. They have 12 systems, limited industrial capacity, and approximately 200 ships. Our force represents a 15-to-1 advantage. Nevertheless, sir, she insists the matter is of critical importance. Vorthak sighed, a sound like grinding stone. Very well. 5 minutes. Intelligence Coordinator Ethak entered the command center with obvious nervousness, her arachnoid form trembling despite the controlled environment. Chancellor, I have disturbing reports from our occupied territories. Speak quickly, Coordinator. History awaits. Sir, in the past 6 hours, 147 worlds under hegemony control have experienced simultaneous infrastructure failures. Transportation networks, communication systems, power grids, and military supply lines have suffered coordinated attacks. Vorthak's 3 hearts skipped a beat. Coordinated? You mean organized resistance? Sir, the precision and timing suggest these operations were planned months in advance. Every attack targeted critical vulnerabilities that would require intimate knowledge of our systems and protocols. Admiral Kithex leaned forward. How is that possible? Our security measures are absolute. Ethak's form shuddered. Ma'am, preliminary investigations suggest the attacks were conducted by individuals already embedded within our infrastructure. Many of the saboteurs appear to have been working in their positions for over a year. The implications hit Vorthak like a physical blow. You mean humans have been infiltrating our worlds? Sir, it appears that many individuals we classified as refugees, traitors, or laborers were actually intelligence operatives. Our psychological profiles indicated that humans were incapable of long-term deception at this scale. How many? Vorthak's voice dropped to a whisper. Based on the scope of the operations, we estimate several thousand embedded agents across our territory, possibly tens of thousands. The command center fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Finally, Admiral Kithex spoke. Chancellor, if humans have maintained this level of intelligence penetration, Then they know everything about our fleet positions, supply lines, and strategic objectives, Vorthak finished. His ancient mind raced through the implications. How long have they been watching us? Before anyone could answer, the ship's communication officer announced an incoming priority transmission. Chancellor, we're receiving a broadcast on all frequencies from an unknown source. The signal is penetrating our encrypted channels. Display it. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in military uniform standing in what appeared to be a command center. Behind her, tactical displays showed detailed schematics of hegemony fleet positions with impossible accuracy. Greetings, Supreme Chancellor Vorthak, the human said, her voice carrying across the flagship's command center with crystal clarity. I am Colonel Sarah Mitchell, Director of Terran Special Operations Command. I believe we need to have a conversation. Vorthak's exoskeleton began secreting stress hormones. How does she know my location? These channels are quantum encrypted. On screen, Colonel Mitchell smiled. I know your location because we've been monitoring your communications for 18 months. I know your fleet strength because we've had observers embedded in your command structure since before this war began. And I know your strategic objectives because we've been reading your classified planning documents in real time. Impossible, Admiral Kithex breathed. Not impossible, just carefully planned. Mitchell gestured, and the display behind her shifted to show detailed breakdowns of hegemony military assets. You're currently commanding 1,500 ships that you believe represent a decisive advantage. You're planning to assault Earth with 90% of your total naval capacity, while leaving skeleton crews to defend your core territories. The accuracy of the information was terrifying. Every detail, every classified specification, every strategic assumption was laid bare on the human's display. What do you want? Vorthak managed to ask. To offer you a choice, Mitchell replied. You can proceed with your planned assault and discover what happens when you attack a species that's been preparing for this moment for 2 years. Or you can withdraw your forces and open negotiations for a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Vorthak's pride overrode his growing fear. You threaten me with what? Your 12 systems and 200 ships? Mitchell's smile widened. Chancellor, you've made a fundamental error in your intelligence assessment. Humans don't have 12 systems. We have 97 established colonies, 36 industrial complexes, and manufacturing capacity that exceeds your estimates by a factor of 8. The displays behind her shifted to show star charts marking human settlements across vast regions of space that the hegemony had assumed were empty. The scope was staggering, representing a network of hidden colonies that had been developing for decades. Similarly, Mitchell continued, we don't have 200 ships. Our current operational fleet includes over 1,500 combat vessels, with another 500 coming online within the week. Vorthak felt his world shifting beneath him. You lie. Our intelligence networks would have detected such a fleet. Your intelligence networks have been compromised since you first made contact with our species. Every report they've provided has been carefully crafted to support the illusion of human weakness. Mitchell's expression grew cold. Did you really think a species capable of interstellar flight would be as primitive as you believed? Admiral Kithex was frantically consulting her tactical displays. Chancellor, our deep space sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout this sector. Previously unidentified ships are emerging from asteroid fields and nebula formations. On the main viewer, space around the hegemony fleet began to shimmer as cloaking fields deactivated. Human warships materialized from hiding spots that had been carefully prepared over months of planning. The vessels were sleek, predatory designs that spoke of advanced technology and aggressive intent. My God, one of the communication officers whispered. They're everywhere. Mitchell's voice continued across the channel. Chancellor, you're currently surrounded by a fleet that outnumbers your forces 3 to 1. Every ship in your armada is targeted by multiple human vessels equipped with weapon systems your intelligence files haven't identified. Vorthak stared at the tactical display showing his mighty armada suddenly, dwarfed by the human fleet that had appeared around them. How long have you been here? We've been in position for 6 weeks, waiting for you to mass your forces in one convenient location. While you were planning to destroy humanity, we were planning to demonstrate why that would be a very poor decision. The Supreme Chancellor's 3 hearts were racing now, pumping stress hormones through his system at dangerous levels. What are your terms? Complete withdrawal of hegemony forces from all contested systems, reparations for damages caused during your unprovoked aggression, and establishment of formal diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than assumed superiority. And if we refuse, Mitchell's smile disappeared. Then you'll discover what happens when humans stop pretending to be helpless. Your fleet will be disabled rather than destroyed. Your crews will be returned to hegemony space, and your government will explain to your people how their invincible military was neutralized by a species they believed was primitive. Admiral Kethex was studying her sensors with growing alarm. Chancellor, I'm detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our databases. The human ships are using technology we don't understand. That's because we've been developing it specifically to counter your known capabilities, Mitchell said, apparently monitoring their communications. Every engagement in this war has been a learning experience for us. We've been studying your tactics, your technology, and your psychology. Vorthak felt the weight of absolute defeat settling over him. You planned this from the beginning. From the moment your species decided that conquest was preferable to diplomacy, we gave you every opportunity to resolve this peacefully. Mitchell's voice carried genuine sadness. 29 minutes had passed since Colonel Mitchell's ultimatum, and the hegemony flagship was filled with frantic activity. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood frozen at the center of his command bridge, watching his officers scramble to analyze their impossible situation. Sir, we've confirmed human fleet strength at over 4,000 vessels, Admiral Kethex reported, her voice hollow with disbelief. Our sensors indicate weapons technology at least 50 years more advanced than our intelligence estimates suggested. How? Vorthak demanded. How did we miss this? Intelligence Coordinator Ithak scuttled forward, her arachnoid form trembling with either fear or excitement. Chancellor, I've been analyzing the data, and I believe we've encountered the most sophisticated deception operation in galactic history. Explain. Sir, every piece of intelligence we gathered about human capabilities was carefully crafted to support a false narrative. The humans we captured provided information under interrogation that seemed authentic, but was actually designed to mislead us about their true strength. Admiral Kethex looked up from her tactical display. Are you saying our prisoners lied? Not lied, ma'am. They told us exactly what they had been trained to reveal. The humans we captured were expendable operatives who genuinely believed the false information they carried. Ithak's revelation sent chills through the command center. Their military doctrine includes deliberate compartmentalization, designed to protect strategic secrets even from their own personnel. Vorthak felt his world crumbling around him. Then we never understood what we were fighting. Sir, analysis of human behavior patterns suggests they view warfare as an extension of their evolutionary survival strategies. They don't just fight battles. They manipulate the entire strategic environment to ensure victory before combat begins. Ithak paused, accessing more data. They've been treating this entire conflict as what they call a psychological operation. The communication system crackled to life with Colonel Mitchell's voice. Chancellor, you have 1 minute remaining. Vorthak looked around his bridge at officers who had believed themselves masters of galactic warfare just hours earlier. The weight of his species' survival pressed down on his ancient shoulders. Open a channel. Channel open, sir. Colonel Mitchell, I formally request terms for cessation of hostilities. Mitchell's image appeared on the main screen, her expression grave but not triumphant. I'm authorized to accept your surrender, Chancellor. However, I need to make something clear before we proceed. Speak. This demonstration was not designed to humiliate your people or destroy your civilization. It was designed to prevent a war that would have cost millions of lives on both sides. Mitchell gestured to her displays. Despite appearances, humanity has no desire for conquest or revenge. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in confusion. Then why reveal your true capabilities? Because the alternative was allowing you to attack our homeworld with a force you believed was overwhelming. The resulting battle would have required us to destroy your fleet entirely, to protect our civilian population. Mitchell's voice carried genuine regret. This way your people live and our people live. Admiral Kethex leaned forward. You could have ended this war months ago with this fleet. Why didn't you? Because we hoped you would eventually choose diplomacy over warfare. Every human who died in this conflict was given the chance to live if your leadership had made different decisions. Mitchell's expression hardened slightly. We gave you every opportunity to discover that humans value life more than conquest. Intelligence Coordinator Weethak was analyzing the human fleet formations with professional interest. Colonel, your tactical deployment suggests capabilities beyond what we're currently observing. Are we seeing your full military capacity? Mitchell smiled grimly. Coordinator, you're seeing approximately 30% of our active fleet. The remainder is currently securing the star systems you evacuated to mass your forces here. The implications hit the Hegemony Command like a physical blow. While they had been gathering for what they believed would be a decisive battle, the humans had been seizing undefended territory across their empire. How many systems? Forthak asked, though he dreaded the answer. 215 hegemony worlds are now under human control. Your civilian populations are unharmed, but your military infrastructure has been systematically neutralized. Mitchell's tone remained professional. We've also secured your primary shipyards, industrial facilities, and resource extraction operations. Vorthak felt his three hearts struggling to pump blood through his shock-paralyzed circulatory system. You've conquered half our empire while we weren't looking. We've liberated half your empire while you were planning genocide, Mitchell corrected. There's a significant difference in terminology and intent. Admiral Keethex was staring at tactical displays that showed the true scope of human operations. This is impossible. You would need hundreds of thousands of troops to secure that many worlds. We used approximately 50,000 personnel, supplemented by local populations who were eager to assist once we explained the situation. Mitchell replied, It turns out that many species under hegemony rule weren't entirely happy with your governing methods. The revelation that the hegemony subject species had actively assisted the humans was perhaps the most devastating blow to Vorthak's worldview. His entire understanding of galactic politics was crumbling. Colonel, what are your terms? He asked finally. Complete withdrawal of hegemony forces to your core 12 systems, dissolution of your client state network, and recognition of independence for all previously conquered species. Reparations for war damages to be negotiated through diplomatic channels. Mitchell paused. And establishment of formal diplomatic relations based on mutual respect. You're dismantling our empire, Vorthak observed. We're ending your empire, Mitchell corrected. There's a difference between ruling through strength and ruling through fear. Your species will remain independent and prosperous, but you'll no longer have the ability to threaten other civilizations. Intelligence Coordinator Weethak was reviewing the tactical situation with growing amazement. Colonel, the level of coordination required for this operation suggests planning that began before first contact between our species. How long have you been preparing for this conflict? Mitchell's answer would haunt hegemony strategic thinking for generations. Coordinator, we began planning for the possibility of hostile alien contact the moment we developed interstellar travel. Every human colony, every industrial facility, every technological advancement has been developed with the assumption that we might someday need to defend our species against threats we couldn't yet imagine. You planned for war with enemies you had never met? Admiral Keethex asked in disbelief. We planned for survival in a universe we didn't understand. When we encountered the hegemony and observed your treatment of other species, we realized our preparations were justified. Mitchell's expression grew sad. We hoped we were wrong about you. We gave you 2 years to prove that diplomatic solutions were possible. Vorthak understood now that humanity had never been fighting a desperate defensive war. They had been conducting a controlled experiment to determine whether the hegemony was capable of peaceful coexistence. And we failed your test, he said quietly. You chose conquest over diplomacy, fear over respect, and genocide over negotiation, Mitchell replied. But the test isn't over yet. Your response to this moment will determine whether your species joins the galactic community as equals or remains isolated as a cautionary tale. The old chancellor looked around his bridge one final time, seeing the faces of officers who had believed themselves invincible just hours earlier. The weight of his civilization's future rested on his next words. Colonel Mitchell, I formally surrender the hegemony fleet and accept your terms for the cessation of hostilities. Surrender accepted, Chancellor. Coordinates for diplomatic proceedings will be transmitted to your navigation systems. You have 48 hours to communicate with your government and prepare for negotiations. As Mitchell's image faded from the screen, Vorthak turned to his staff. Begin withdrawal procedures. Signal all hegemony forces to stand down and return to core territory. Admiral Kithex hesitated. Sir, the Council of Dominators will demand explanations for this defeat. Then we will explain to them that we encountered a species that fights wars the way we thought only myths described. Vorthax's voice carried the weight of absolute truth. We will tell them that humans don't just defeat enemies. They convince enemies to defeat themselves. Intelligence Coordinator Wythak was still analyzing the tactical displays. Chancellor, I'm beginning to understand their psychological warfare doctrine. They didn't just outfight us. They made us complicit in our own defeat by allowing us to reveal our true intentions. Meaning, sir, if we had chosen diplomacy at any point in the past 2 years, this demonstration of force would never have been necessary. They gave us every opportunity to prove we could coexist peacefully. Ethak paused, her form trembling with the implications. The entire war was a test of our character, and we failed it completely. As the Great Hegemony Armada began its withdrawal from the field of their greatest defeat, Vorthak reflected on the lesson humanity had taught them. The most dangerous enemy wasn't the On. 6 months after the signing of the Terra Accords, Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned diplomatic station orbiting Xerion Prime, the same world where his encounter with Zefak Thorn had triggered the revelation of humanity's true capabilities. Now served as the neutral meeting ground for an entirely transformed galaxy. Through the reinforced viewing ports, he could see ships from dozens of species moving in carefully coordinated traffic patterns. Hegemony vessels shared space lanes with human frigates, while newly independent worlds sent their own diplomatic missions to participate in what was being called the new Galactic Council. Quite a view, came a familiar voice from behind him. Marcus turned to see Colonel Sarah Mitchell approaching, her expression mixing satisfaction with the weariness that came from months of intensive diplomatic negotiations. Yes, ma'am. Hard to believe how much has changed. The intelligence reports from across the former hegemony territories are remarkable, Mitchell said, joining him at the viewing port. 43 species have declared independence and petitioned for membership in the galactic community. Trade networks that had been restricted for decades are opening up. Scientific collaboration is beginning on a scale we never imagined possible. Marcus nodded, watching a massive cargo vessel from one of the newly liberated worlds dock with the station. What about the hegemony core worlds? Adjusting, slowly but surely. Without their empire to manage, they're discovering that they actually have considerable potential as a peaceful civilization. Mitchell pulled up a data pad showing economic indicators. Their scientists and engineers are making rapid advances now that they're not focused entirely on military applications. And Zefak Thorn? Mitchell smiled. Actually, he's requested a meeting with you. Apparently, your encounter in that cantina has become something of a legend in hegemony military academies. Marcus raised an eyebrow. A legend? He's been teaching courses on human psychology and tactical thinking. His thesis is that the hegemony's greatest mistake was assuming that physical superiority guaranteed victory. Mitchell gestured toward the bustling station around them. He's become quite an advocate for what humans call asymmetric thinking. Through the station's communication system, an announcement echoed in multiple languages. Diplomatic shuttle from Hegemony Core arriving at Docking Bay 7. That would be him now, Mitchell said. He specifically requested to speak with you before the formal ceremonies begin. Marcus made his way to the docking bay, curious about what the alien warrior who had started this entire chain of events might have to say. When the airlock cycled open, Zefak Thorn emerged, but he looked different from the predatory figure Marcus remembered from the cantina. The hegemony warrior's posture was more relaxed, less aggressive. His ceremonial uniform bore diplomatic rather than military insignia, and his compound eyes held an expression that Marcus had never seen in his species before. Respect. Staff Sergeant Chen, Zefak said, his translator rendering the words with careful formality. I have traveled far to speak with you. Just Marcus now, the former Green Beret replied. I've transitioned to the diplomatic corps. What can I do for you? Zefak's mandibles clicked in what Marcus now recognized as nervous laughter. I wish to understand how my people were so thoroughly deceived about yours. Marcus gestured toward a quiet seating area overlooking the station's central plaza. What specifically do you want to know? Everything, Zefak replied as they settled into chairs designed to accommodate multiple species' physiologies. How did humans plan deception on such a massive scale? How did you coordinate operations across hundreds of worlds without our intelligence networks detecting them? Marcus considered the question carefully. The truth is, we didn't start with a grand plan. We started with the assumption that any species capable of interstellar conquest probably wouldn't be interested in peaceful coexistence, but your preparations were so extensive because we've learned from our own history that the most dangerous assumption is that your enemy thinks like you do. Marcus leaned back in his chair. When we made first contact with the hegemony, we immediately began studying your responses to various situations. Every interaction was a learning experience. Zefak's compound eyes fixed on Marcus with intense focus. You were testing us from the beginning. We were trying to understand you. When we realized that your species viewed apparent weakness as an invitation for conquest, we gave you exactly what your psychology demanded to see. But the cost in human lives. Marcus's expression grew somber. Every human who died in this conflict volunteered for their mission knowing the risks. They died to prevent a much larger war that would have cost millions of lives on both sides. The concept was clearly difficult for Zefak to process. Your soldiers chose to die to protect their enemies? Our soldiers chose to die to protect innocent civilians, including many in hegemony space who had no voice in their government's decisions. Marcus gestured toward the bustling station around them. Look at what we've accomplished by choosing cooperation over conquest. Zefak was silent for several minutes, processing the implications. Finally, he spoke again. In our encounter on Zerion Prime, you could have killed me easily. Yes, but you chose to wound and humiliate me instead. Why? Marcus smiled. Because I needed you to carry a message back to your superiors. Your wounded pride was more valuable than your death would have been. You planned our entire meeting? I planned for the possibility that we would encounter each other. When it happened, I improvised based on your psychological profile and the strategic objectives of the mission. Zefak's form trembled slightly. You mean you studied me personally before our meeting? I studied your species, your military doctrine, and the psychological patterns that would make a hegemony warrior likely to seek confrontation with a lone human. Marcus's tone was matter-of-fact. When you entered that cantina, I knew exactly how to manipulate the situation to achieve the desired outcome. Which was? To convince you and your leadership that humans were more dangerous than you had assumed, while simultaneously giving you a face-saving way to end the conflict before it escalated to total warfare. The alien warrior sat in stunned silence for several more minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of genuine awe. Your species fights wars with psychology as much as weapons. We fight wars to end them as quickly as possible with minimal casualties, Marcus corrected. Physical force is just one tool among many. Through the viewing ports, they could see delegations from dozens of species arriving for the formal establishment of the new Galactic Council. Ships that had never shared the same space before were now docking side by side in peaceful coexistence. What happens now? Zefak asked. Now we find out whether different species can work together to solve problems instead of fighting over resources and territory. Marcus stood up, preparing to return to his diplomatic duties. Your people have knowledge and capabilities that could benefit the entire galaxy. The question is whether you're willing to share them as equals rather than conquerors. Zefak rose as well, his massive form towering over the human. And if we prove worthy of your trust, then we'll show you technologies and discoveries that we've been developing, while you were focused on warfare. Humans have been exploring the galaxy for decades, and we've learned things that might surprise you. As they parted ways, Zefak paused. Marcus, I have one final question. Yes? On a scale of 1 to 10, how dangerous are humans when they're not trying to be peaceful? Marcus smiled, and for just a moment, Zefak caught a glimpse of the predator that had so easily defeated him in that cantina months earlier. Zefak, if humans ever stopped trying to be peaceful, the question wouldn't be how dangerous we are. It would be whether anyone would survive long enough to find out. As the alien warrior departed, Marcus returned to the observation deck where Colonel Mitchell was reviewing preparations for the evening ceremony. How did it go? She asked. I think he's beginning to understand that winning without fighting is preferable to fighting without winning. Marcus watched Zephak's shuttle depart for the hegemony delegation ship. The real question is whether the rest of the galaxy is ready for what comes next. Mitchell nodded toward the diplomatic complex, where representatives from over 60 species were gathering. The establishment of the galactic community is just the beginning. Now we find out whether we can build something better than the old Empire-based system. Through the viewing ports, the lights of hundreds of ships created a constellation of possibilities. For the first time in galactic history, different species were choosing cooperation over conquest, understanding over domination, and at the center of it all, humanity had proven that the greatest strength wasn't the ability to destroy your enemies. It was the wisdom to turn them into allies. The age of galactic empires was ending, and the age of galactic cooperation was about to begin, all because a green beret in a cantina had shown an alien warrior that there were scarier things in the universe than natural armor and superior numbers. There was human ingenuity, unleashed in defense of peace. 3 days after the surrender at Dominion Prime, the Hegemony Core Council convened an emergency session on their capital world of Nexus Prime. The massive crystalline chamber, built to intimidate visiting dignitaries from across the galaxy, now felt more like a tomb for a dying empire. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood before the Council of Dominators, 12 of the most powerful beings in hegemony space, each representing a different aspect of their civilization's dominance. Today, their usual aura of absolute authority was replaced by barely controlled panic. Explain to us how the greatest military force in galactic history was neutralized without firing a single shot, demanded Dominator Prime Zexthor, his massive crystalline form pulsing with angry bioluminescence. Vorthak activated the holographic displays that showed the scope of humanity's deception operation. Esteemed Dominators, we were not defeated by superior force. We were defeated by superior intelligence. Impossible, snarled Dominator Krex, her 6 arms gesticulating wildly. No species in the galaxy possesses the cognitive capacity to orchestrate deception on this scale. The evidence suggests otherwise, Vorthak replied, his ancient voice heavy with the weight of truth. Analysis indicates that humans have been conducting a comprehensive psychological operation against our civilization for over 2 years. Intelligence Coordinator Ethak scuttled forward, her arachnoid form trembling under the intense scrutiny of the Council. Esteemed Dominators, our investigation has revealed disturbing facts about human cognitive capabilities. Speak, commanded Dominator Prime Zexthor. Sirs, human intelligence appears to operate on multiple levels simultaneously. While we were monitoring their military responses and tactical decisions, they were analyzing our psychological profiles, cultural biases, and strategic assumptions. Ethak's voice carried scientific fascination despite the circumstances. They predicted our responses to their apparent weakness with 97% accuracy. Dominator Yalthan leaned forward, his serpentine form coiling with agitation. You claim they manipulated our decision-making processes? Sir, they didn't manipulate our decisions. They simply created conditions that encouraged us to make the choices they wanted us to make. Ethak paused, accessing her databanks. They understood that our species would interpret apparent weakness as an opportunity for conquest, rather than a genuine request for peaceful coexistence. The implications were staggering. The hegemony's entire strategic response had been anticipated and accounted for in human planning from the beginning. Show us their true military capacity, Dominator Prime Zexthor commanded. The holographic displays shifted to show the scope of human civilization as it actually existed. Star systems that the hegemony had assumed were empty revealed massive industrial complexes, hidden shipyards, and defensive installations that had been developing for decades. By the void, whispered Dominator Krex. How many ships do they actually possess? Current estimates suggest over 6,000 active vessels, with production capabilities that exceed our own by a factor of 3, Vorthak replied. Their technology level appears to be approximately 50 years more advanced than our intelligence assessments indicated. Dominator Zythak, the Council's military specialist, studied the displays with growing alarm. Chancellor, if humans possessed this level of capability, why did they allow us to capture 12 of their systems? Because those 12 systems were sacrificial offerings designed to convince us that our strategy was succeeding, Vorthak explained. The populations we conquered were volunteers, who maintained their positions, specifically to provide us with false intelligence about human capabilities. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every victory the hegemony had achieved had been permitted by an enemy who was studying their methods and preparing for this moment. What of their homeworld? Asked Dominator Prime Zexthor. Surely Earth represents a legitimate target. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in what passed for bitter laughter among his kind. Esteemed Dominator, our intelligence files indicate that Earth is defended by approximately 50 vessels and 3 orbital platforms. Actual reconnaissance suggests the presence of over 800 defensive platforms and a garrison fleet of unknown size. Intelligence Coordinator Ithak added more disturbing details. Sir, analysis of human defensive doctrine suggests that any assault on their homeworld would trigger what they call total war protocol. Our estimates indicate they could mobilize over 10,000 vessels within 72 hours if Earth were directly threatened. The numbers were beyond anything the hegemony had conceived possible. They had been planning to fight a minor regional power while actually facing the most advanced military force in known galactic history. How did we miss this? Demanded Dominator Yalthan. Because humans excel at what they call strategic deception, Ithak replied. Every piece of information we gathered was carefully controlled to support the narrative they wanted us to believe. They didn't lie to us. They simply ensured we only discovered truths that supported their operational goals. Dominator Prime Zexthor's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep red, indicating extreme agitation. What are their current demands? Complete withdrawal from all conquered territories, dissolution of our client-state networks, and establishment of diplomatic relations based on mutual respect, Vorthak reported. They've also indicated that continued hostilities would result in what they term complete strategic neutralization of hegemony military capacity. Meaning they would disable our ability to wage interstellar warfare while leaving our civilian infrastructure intact, Vorthak explained. They've demonstrated this capability on the worlds they've already secured. Dominator Krex was reviewing tactical data with increasing frustration. Chancellor, why haven't they simply destroyed us? With this level of superiority, they could have eliminated our civilization entirely. Because that's not their objective, Vorthak replied. Analysis of human behavior patterns suggests they view warfare as a last resort, rather than a preferred method of resolving conflicts. They appear to genuinely prefer diplomatic solutions. The concept was alien to the hegemony leadership, who had built their empire through conquest and intimidation. The idea that a species could possess overwhelming military superiority while still choosing negotiation over annihilation was almost incomprehensible. What do our psychological profiles tell us about human intentions? Asked Dominator Zythak. Intelligence Coordinator Wythak consulted her databases. Sir, humans appear to operate under what they call ethical constraints even during warfare. They've demonstrated consistent patterns of minimizing civilian casualties and preserving enemy infrastructure whenever possible. You mean they fight limited wars even when they possess unlimited capability? Yes, sir. They appear to view total warfare as a failure of statecraft rather than an acceptable tool of diplomacy. Dominator Prime Zexthor was struggling to process this information. And why reveal their true strength now? Because our planned assault on Earth would have forced them to respond with overwhelming force to protect their civilian population, Vorthak explained. They chose to demonstrate their capabilities in a controlled manner to prevent the need for actual combat. The council chamber fell into contemplative silence. Finally, Dominator Prime Zexthor spoke. What are our options? We can accept their terms and transition to diplomatic relations, or we can continue hostilities and face the complete dismantlement of our military capacity, Vorthak replied. There is no third option, and if we choose diplomacy, then we join what humans call the galactic community as equals rather than conquerors. Our species retains independence and prosperity, but we no longer have the ability to threaten other civilizations. Dominator Yalthan coiled thoughtfully. Chancellor, in your professional assessment, what would happen if we chose to continue fighting? Vorthak considered the question carefully. Esteemed Dominator, based on demonstrated human capabilities, I estimate our military forces would be neutralized within 6 months. Our shipyards would be disabled, our fleets immobilized, and our ability to project power beyond our core systems eliminated entirely. But our civilian population would survive? Yes, sir. Human warfare doctrine appears to prioritize strategic objectives over destruction for its own sake. The implications were clear. The hegemony faced a choice between dignified surrender and inevitable defeat, but either way, their empire was ending. Very well, Dominator Prime Zexthor announced after consulting with his colleagues. Chancellor Vorthak, you are authorized to negotiate terms for a formal end to hostilities with the human government. As the council session ended, Vorthak reflected on the bitter irony of their situation. The hegemony had sought to conquer humanity and instead had discovered that they had been conquered from the moment first contact was established. The humans had simply been polite enough to give them time to reach that conclusion on their own.